To those of you who bitch about my truth statements with a little salt, what about Trump? All he posts is AI shit. I'm not posting that. I'm real. See? This Buzzy Bee teacher, political satirist, and I'm here to bitch about the you-know-what that is fucking with our you-know-what. I'm sick and tired of all of it. I hope you are too. Let's keep it up. And what about the Epstein files? When are we going to give Adelita Grijalva her vote? And let's not forget about Gaza and what the hell Israel is doing to those poor people on the flotilla. And don't forget he's fucking with our medicine now. He's raising the tariffs even higher. What the fuck are we supposed to do? While we're on the subject, who really killed Charlie Kirk?
Hey MAGA, did you know that the US dollar has lost 11% in Trump's first 6 months? Did you know that that's the biggest drop in the US dollar since 1973? Before I was even born. This is what you guys voted for? Great. Follow me for more.
This isn't me trying to fearmonger, this is just me trying to prepare you. The US economy right now is like a Jenga tower with 18 fucking pieces missing. We are one piece pulled out away from everything just toppling down. AI was responsible for 40% of US GDP growth this past year and 80% of US stock growth. And the manufacturing industry has contracted for 7 consecutive months, while every other economic indicator is saying this is as bad as things have been since 2009. Now, when you have a sentence that says the economy is as bad as it's been since 2009, you are fucked. So again, this is not me fear-mongering, this is just me preparing you. Our economy is in a very bad place. If you have a job, hold on to it with everything you have.
I just watched Margaret Cho's video where she's like, Koreans are mean in the best possible way, but they are. And I'm like, yeah, we're mean and we're also petty. We're also petty. We hold grudges and we like revenge. Apparently, Kimchi Cakes put out a video and all the Korean netizens went over onto that MAGA Karen's page and basically got her to shut her comments off finally. And now we're seeing the Korean government talking about kicking out all of the Americans who are on work visas out of Korea, which doesn't surprise me because, again, we are petty. And then also talking about pulling out of other investments and pulling companies out of America and screwing over our economy because why not? They saw their citizens getting frog marched onto the streets, handcuffed, and they were like, no. That was embarrassing. And once again, it just shows you that MAGA is bad for business. MAGA is bad for the economy. New Jersey's having a governor's race this year, and we cannot afford to go MAGA. Like, literally can't afford it.
I just keep showing up bearing bad news tonight. My apologies. Trust me, I genuinely wish I had some good stuff to report on or talk about. I really do. But let's be straight. The economic picture right now isn't just shaky, it's deteriorating. And we're all feeling it. Prices are soaring. Inflation remains painfully high. Tariffs, already biting, are starting to push everyday cost into territory that was unimaginable just a year ago. For example, some of my boyfriend's favorite Donald Ross shirts jumped from like $90 to $130 overnight. That's not a minor glitch, that's a red flag. Red meat prices have exploded. Eggs and gas are still painfully expensive. Everything from food staples to fuel is squeezed. Meanwhile, our attention is being diverted constantly with distractions, drama, and spectacles. Don't even get me started on the UN speech, how everyone else is going to hell. It just seems every time something outrageous happens, there's another headline meant to drown out what's worsening under the hood. Economists are rolling out alarming statistics. In 2025 so far, U.S. companies have announced mass layoffs in staggering numbers across retail, tech, media, nonprofits, with some sources reporting over 744,000 layoffs just in the first half of this year. And that does include the 287,000 jobs Doge cut, even though we don't see that money anywhere. To put it in perspective, by June 2025, about 1.6 million people were laid off or discharged in the U.S., including temporary cuts and permanent cuts. And in tech alone, over 140,000 workers have been impacted so far this year. That's staggering. That means we're seeing the worst wave of cuts since the pandemic in many sectors. Meanwhile, the unemployment rate may look low on paper, around 4.2%, But that number hides something more disturbing. 34% of employed workers today are functionally underemployed or earning so little they're barely making ends meet in terms of low wages, really bad benefits, precarious hours. That's the highest number in our country's history under this measure. So yes, this administration points to low unemployment and claims economic success. Don't let that fool you. It's surface numbers masking deeper strain. What's worse, experts estimate that as more tariffs fully land, the average U.S. household could lose about $2,300 in net income over the next year from increased import costs, just from higher costs. Tariffs are at levels not seen in decades. Average effective rates are approaching the highest since the 1930s. Look at what's being hit. Leather, leather, shoes, handbags, projected price rises of 37%, clothing, 35%, new vehicles up to 12% more, roughly $5,000 extra per new car in many cases. That's on top of the already astronomical prices for new vehicles. Metal goods, 36% increase. More bad news. They're expecting 480,000 more Americans to lose their jobs by the end of this year. That's only 3.5 months away. And we know these cost increases won't land on big corporations. They'll land on regular people. Low-income families will be bearing the brunt of all of this as their disposable income is virtually going to disappear under this Trump session. I'm looking at you, MAGA, because statistically, that will impact most of you. And when you factor in job losses, people unable to find decent work because of reduced job creation, all under an administration that claims economic strength, you see the contradiction. Keeping all of this in mind, all those layoffs, family members who aren't bringing in income and can't find a job because the new job creation under the Trump administration is some of the lowest ever, with all these higher costs taking away more money in your pocket. But even on top of all of that, once the big, beautiful bill portion kicks in, where you have to be employed to get Medicaid, but people can't find jobs to get that Medicaid coverage, they will suffer even further. What we're watching is more than inflation. It's a structural squeeze, fewer opportunities, higher costs, and less support, all happening while powerful voices shout about economic success. So here's what I want you to remember. Don't let low unemployment be the whole story. Look under the surface. Watch how tariffs and trade policies are being used to shift burdens onto families. Pay attention to layoffs, cuts in public services, and shrinking safety nets. Stay alert to the diversion tactics and distractions. They want your gaze somewhere else while the real damage happens. We need to call this what it is, an economic storm, and one too many are being asked to just ride it out. But riding it out is betrayal. We deserve better.
Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's Anthony. I'm not disrupting. You're watching the video, continue watching. It's amazing having you here. So I just popped up to say thank you for watching my videos, and make sure that you comment, because that's the most important part of this video, commenting, so that we can engage in a discussion. And make sure that even you engage in our community post, really make amazing posts there.
The U.S. may be headed for another 2008-level financial crisis. And you know who's responsible? Donald Trump and BlackRock. Back in 2008, millions of Americans lost their homes, their jobs, and their entire life savings because of toxic investments, massive hidden risks, and reckless financial engineering that just collapsed under its own weight. Fast forward to today, and those exact same risks are being capitalized on. Donald Trump has just signed an executive order allowing your 401k, your retirement money, to be poured into crypto and private equity. These assets are volatile, hard to value, and in some cases, impossible to sell in the case of a crisis. Meaning if they tank, your retirement fund could be wiped out. And at the center of this, the engineer of this, is BlackRock, the world's largest asset manager. Did you know BlackRock managed Fannie Mae's mortgage debt before the crash and then was hired to clean up the mortgage debt mess after the crash? They had massive financial incentive from managing that crisis, and today they manage $9 trillion of your pension and retirement funds. And their CEO, Larry Fink, has been pushing hard for private market access and digital cryptocurrency for everyone, and he just got the green light from the Oval Office. I wonder what financial incentive Larry Fink could have from increasing the risk profile of your investments. And what makes this even worse is the compounded pressure of our $1.7 trillion student loan crisis. Remember the Trump administration's announcement that they'll garnish the wages of those who default? That's less money out of your paycheck for food, rent, utilities, and now on top of it, your retirement fund could be wiped out from high-risk bets. In 2008, the danger was risky subprime mortgages packaged into complex securities. Today, it's risky, illiquid private equity deals and speculative crypto stuffed inside your retirement account. On top of historic high student loan debts and wage garnishment, both of these crises share the same dangerous traits: opaque pricing, concentration of risk, and the potential for a very sudden and brutal collapse. Except it's not going to be BlackRock or Donald Trump feeling the weight of that collapse. It's going to be me and you. And this isn't fear-mongering. Unless regulators put very, very strict guardrails into place, history isn't just going to rhyme. It's going to repeat itself.
You know how I know the Orange Clown is losing his MAGA cult? Because they did not obey his latest talking point. Now, we all know that MAGA is the most brainless, obedient, bootlicking cult in the entire world. And they get a lot of their energy and their sense of community from their dumb little mantras, their little slogans that the Orange Clown tells them to repeat. And we've all heard the big ones, right? It's like, lock her up, drain the swamp, make America great again. These are just like nonsense phrases. They don't mean anything. And most importantly, they don't ever come true, but it doesn't matter to the cult because they enjoy saying them, because at the core of them, the seed of them, is the idea that somebody else is getting hurt. And the latest one that the Orange Clown and his cabinet of freaks tried to sell to the cult was, remember, short-term pain for long-term gain. Now, the Orange Clown said that over and over again, and all of his little goons went out and said it all over the place, all over Fox News, all over Twitter. And here's the thing. It didn't really work. It didn't really catch on. Now, this was right at the beginning of the tariff insanity. And at the beginning, you know, a few of the cult members tried to be good little soldiers. And they went out and they made videos repeating it. And a few of them would spam it in the comments and, you know, what, blah, blah, blah. But it just kind of faded away. And now if you don't understand why it didn't catch on, it's because you fundamentally misunderstand MAGA as a cult. And I think a lot of people on the left actually do. Because how many times have I heard, MAGA does not care about being hurt as long as they are hurting others. And this is absolutely untrue. MAGA are the most spoiled, selfish, short-sighted people on the planet. And they do not tolerate discomfort in any way. And even when they cheer on this regime's most vile policies, it's because they think there's something in it for them. For example, when you see them celebrating mass deportations, it's not just because they're gross racists who want to see brown people brutalized. Obviously, yes, that is a factor. They are. But it's also because they think that removing immigrants is going to directly improve their lives. They genuinely believe that there is some fantastical, high-paying job out there with incredible benefits, and the only reason they don't have that job is because an immigrant took it. They believe that they can't afford a house because some immigrant family is living in the house that was meant for them, and once they remove that family, they're going to swoop right in and be able to afford it. There's some cheese slice lady out there who genuinely believes that there's not enough cheese slices in her fridge for all of her gross kids because some immigrant out there is raising the price of cheese. Shout out to the cheese slice lady. I do honestly think about her all the time, and I wonder how many cheese slices she has in her fridge right now. But back to the slogan, short-term pain for long-term gain. This was a fatal miscalculation by the Orange Clown. And this was a fatal miscalculation by any cult leader. Because every intelligent cult leader knows you keep your cult in line by telling them, hey, you got to hand over your blind allegiance, your paycheck, your teenage daughters, because the rapture is coming. What you don't ever do is tell them what day the rapture is coming. Hello, the entire thing will fall apart. And the Orange Clown told his cult, there is a day of rapture. There is a day when the economy is going to be flowing. There's going to be no tax on tips, no tax on overtime. Your kids' medications are going to be 1,000% cheaper. Your lives are going to be better. All your dreams are going to come true. And that day is January 22nd. And that day came, and now the clock is ticking. And he stands there and he tells them, short-term pain for long-term gain? He tells them, buckle up, buttercups. It's time to sacrifice. It's time to be a real patriot. It's time to suffer a little for the greater good of the country. Yeah, freaking right. They might not be in full revolt right now, but their deafening silence at that latest talking point that they were supposed to run with is very telling. Because this is the first time that the Orange Clown has told them, yeah, I'm gonna hurt others, but I'm also gonna hurt you. And that is not what they signed up for. And before you say, what does it matter if they've lost MAGA? This is authoritarianism. They don't even need their votes anymore. Well, that is not how this regime is acting. They are scrambling to consolidate power. They are scrambling to mess with the midterms. These are not the actions of a regime that has it in the bag. And come Christmas, you think they're not going to remember the words of their dear leader, the Orange Clown, when he told them with a smile on his face, well, maybe your little daughter doesn't need 30 toys for Christmas. Maybe she'd be happy with 2 or 3. I don't think so. Do you?
Donald Trump is holding a shovel in the bottom of a 30-foot deep hole, and he is digging like they just released a new Big Mac in China, and he's going to be the first to try it. Let me explain. He's trying to make the shutdown fight a political battle because he thinks he can win those. But in reality, this is a fight with the American people. This is going to show up in 2 ways. First, the stock market. There was supposed to be a jobs report that came out today, but it didn't because of the shutdown. And this was a political decision by Trump. But because that jobs report isn't out there, and we were confident it was going to contain bad news, the stock market is up. But what does that mean? It means investors, including the people managing our retirement plans, are guessing where to invest our money. Because if a business is laying off their workers, it means that either they're not making enough money or a competitor is making money faster. But without jobs numbers, we're left to guess, which means Donald Trump could have just created a stock market bubble. And if the businesses who would have otherwise been exposed by the job numbers soak up a ton of investments, and then they end up losing a ton of money that they announce in a quarterly statement, then all of those dollars disappear from our retirement plans. To put it more plainly, Donald Trump's choice to silence the Bureau of Labor Statistics is exposing American retirement plans to risks that they wouldn't have otherwise been exposed to. The second reason Trump's shutdown is an attack on Americans is how he's responding to it. The headlines say that Trump is using the shutdown to attack blue states, but as Gavin Newsom pointed out this summer, 71% of the American GDP is driven by blue counties. Because even though Texas is red, Dallas and Houston and Austin are all blue. So when Trump ties up billion-dollar projects in places like New York, he's not attacking Democrats. He's attacking 71% of our economy. And that will show up in the GDP. And when GDP starts to shrink, business leaders start making more defensive cuts, which only feeds back into job cuts, which we don't see because of Trump, ultimately accelerating the spiral that is going to cost the country more jobs and more money while prices continue to increase because of tariffs. The only real question is, how bad is it going to get for us before he realizes how bad it is for him and he stops digging? And that's where I have good news, because digging is really hard and Donald's in terrible shape. And I think he's going to realize it when the people who have money quietly whisper to him in the Oval Office that this is all a terrible idea. And at that point, he'll go full taco, lose, call it a win, and this will all go away, making room for the next self-inflicted crisis. See you then.
So welcome to Trumpistan, where we have Ayatollah Donald Trump as the president. Trump is really destroying everything in our country. So let's continue watching, because these are really important testimonies from Americans. How Trump is really destroying our country, and MAGA are silent about it, even though they are being hurt. As long as it destroys others, they are okay with it. So let's continue watching.
We're going to see a massive increase in multi-family homes where kids are moving back home or older parents are moving in with their kids. It's going to be rampant over the next 3.5 years with the way this economy is going to get destroyed, the way the housing market is going to get destroyed, the way that medical bills are going to cripple people in financial bankruptcy, the way student loans and education is going to be unobtainable to pay for people. I mean, it's already been happening over the last several years. It's going to rapidly increase. And my wife and I are fully prepared for that to happen to our kids as they are going out and trying to even find work. Any kind of work in this country is nearly impossible for young people, because most of these places are hiring older people who also need to work now because they can't retire. They can't live on their Social Security. They can't live on their pensions. And they would much prefer to hire an old person who they believe will be more, stable or predictable or whatever. It's a fucking nightmare. We are supposed to live and die and work and be productive. And that's it. That's all the power structures in this country want. If you don't know how to work and produce for them, at the cost of your livelihood and survival, then you aren't worth anything to them. You deserve nothing. You should get nothing. You should just fucking die. And if you aren't happy with getting whatever it is that they minimally can pay you without it being illegal, they're going to do. And if you don't accept it, then you should also just fucking die. That is the entirety of the right wing. I don't even know if you can call them Republicans anymore, because they're not really any traditional Republican. They're Trumpists. Do what I want, take what I'll give you, or fucking die.
Trump's economy is starting to show up, and many economists are pointing to jobs data and inflation, but I would like to redirect your attention to the macro and help understand why what's occurring is not just bad or potentially recessionary, but potentially quite devastating given our national debt. I'm going to try to keep this video under 5 minutes. And with that, I'm breaking this video into 3 parts. First one is, what was Trump's plan with the debt? Second is, what is essentially plan B and the current economic outlook? And then the third one is, what is bound to happen now? Now, I first need to start with understanding the debt. Everyone needs to understand where the debt and why the debt is so important. We are in something called a debt doom loop. Essentially what that means is you and I, the people, need to be able to pay back the debt that we owe the money to. However, in order for us to even come out and be able to pay the debt instead of just paying the interest on the debt, we need to have extreme economic growth, or we need to cut back on a lot of expenses. And that's where Trump's plan, the first point, really was. He talked about and passed legislation, the One Big Beautiful Bill, along with the Genius Act, to be able to essentially hyper-grow the economy. The United States economy grows at roughly about 2 to 3%. In order for us to get out of the debt into a place of stability, we would need to grow roughly 5 to 8, maybe even more, 9, 10% per year for the next, give or take, 7 to 12 years. And just given the sheer size of the United States, anyone can look at that and say, well, short of essentially an AI and automation boom, that's pretty much impossible. So that covers point 1, which Trump's plan was to try to hyper-grow the United States economy. Now, given the fact that the current economic outlook right now is jobs are starting to be cut, and we are looking more towards the fact that we are coming to a recession, I want to really drill this into your head. Nowhere in the plan was there to have a recession. It was to have extreme economic growth, 5-10%. Given the fact that we are most likely headed or in view of potentially having a recession, that leads us to, then what is plan B to get rid of the debt if it's not economic collapse, or what we know in the economic world as called a default? Well, there's 2 ways to get rid of the debt. There's growing out of it, or there's something called inflating the debt away. Now, we're all aware of Biden inflation, or honestly what it really was the cough inflation. So the reality of the situation is Biden inflation hit about 9%. We all remember this as being like prices are just soaring through the roof. Well, here's the thing. In order for us to inflate the debt away so that we don't fall into a default, that would have to become the norm, especially if we fall into some form of a recession. So what does inflate the debt away really mean? Well, that means essentially over the next 10 years, we have to have our currency, the money you hold in your pocket, literally has to be debased. It has to go down in value, which means prices have to go up. Again, if this doesn't happen, then we risk a default on the debt. Now that you understand what was his plan and what is plan B, well, given the fact that we are looking at an economy that, again, there was no plan for a recession, well, if we're headed into a recession, or even if we just have stable growth of 2%, this is what's bound to happen. The regular worker, the regular person is bound to see their salary essentially go down in value. So if you're making $60,000 a year, what feels like $60,000 now, given Biden inflation, $60,000 over the next 5 years will feel like 40. I also want to keep in mind more macro and a little bit of geopolitical. I want to throw this in, is tariffs. Tariffs are not inflationary. What they do is they risk relations, business relations. And so what we're now seeing with the tariffs, it's not inflation. Those are just, it's a one price hike. What we are seeing though is countries are starting to become isolationist as well. So I want everyone to understand there's essentially two ways that this can occur. Number one, the external forces start to get off the dollar as the dollar begins to lose a lot of value compared to other things like gold, okay? Which that means the United States will become more imperialistic because the amount of money that's in supply of other countries, if they stop using it, that supply of money isn't going to just dwindle. No. That's just going to continue to debase the currency, causing even further inflation. So the United States, in order to keep people, countries on the United States dollar, will have to become imperialistic or risk even worse inflation than what is already thought to be needed. Now this leads to the internal component, the internal strife, which is essentially wealth inequality in the United States is already bad. You look at something called the Gini coefficient, and we're sitting at, I think, last time I checked, was in the 40s, mid 40s, something like 42, 43, which is bad. Essentially, wealth inequality is bad. Now, if you begin to inflate the debt away, which means people who don't own assets, who just make a living wage, if you begin to inflate the debt away, that means their economic situation gets worse because their money becomes of less value, while at the same time, assets like gold and stocks and things like that the wealthy own will continue to go up, which will cause even further wealth inequality between the haves and the have-nots. Which, if you look through any history, when the socioeconomic situation of a country is so unequal, it almost always leads to some form of violence internally. So, pretty simple conclusion I want people to kind of wrap their head around is this. The plan was to grow out of the debt. Now, given the fact that we are showing signs that that is not happening, let alone we are potentially headed into a recession, that means we're going to have to print more money in order to keep the economy afloat, which means even more inflation. And given the fact that even more inflation is coming, then that means more countries are going to question whether they want to own the United States dollar or whether they want to become isolationist. And tariffs are going to continue to build these geopolitical strifes between the East and the West. So the key fundamental principle to understand is your money is losing value, and it is going to continue losing even more value at a quicker and accelerating pace as things like a lack of growth in the economy and things like more money is having to be printed to cover the debt. So please understand, when economists say, hey, inflation is coming, this is how and this is why, okay? Alrighty, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. If you want to have a conversation about this went for 9 minutes. I'm sorry. Hopefully you guys learned some things. Alrighty, take care.
So everything that has a beginning must have an end, and thank you for reaching the end of this video. My name is Anthony. It's amazing having you all as my viewers. I love you all. So today we are discussing about how MAGA policies have made inflation really severe in our country, to the extent that most MAGA fanatics are broke, but they don't care. As long as immigrants are being deported, as long as your cities are being bombarded by National Guard, they are really okay with it. Massive federal workers are being fired in massive numbers. You see it. This is all a plan to erode the middle class in our country. If really firing the federal workers was an issue, maybe probably they would do it in installments so that these workers can find jobs elsewhere, or they can prepare for maybe finding jobs elsewhere. But doing it on an instant was all a plan to erode the middle class in our country, disrupting everything in our country. And what I really want to ask you, are you receiving rebates from tariffs or from whatever the tariffs that are the government is collecting? Have you received the rebates? Tell me in the comment section. A man who went bankrupt 7 times, 6 times, I don't know how many times, but it was above 5, if my memory serves me well, is turning our country towards an economic disaster. And as I usually say, Republicans are bad for the economy. Everything bad that has happened to our country, from Richard Nixon, from Ronald Reagan, from Bush to Trump, everything that has happened to our country economically that is worse is really tied to the Republicans. And what we Democrats do wrong is lack of messaging. We really are not good at taking credits for the good we do to this country. And when a Republican president comes to power, he finds a booming economy and they take credits for everything. That's why you see in the national dialogue, they claim that Republicans are good for the economy. They aren't. They're only good at messaging that they are good for the economy. They're only good for the talk. So that's the only part we do bad. Republicans are really bad for the economy. And mark my words, it will be very hard to recover from these Trump's tariffs, these Trump's disastrous economic policies. And who will come to power again? A Democrat president who will now solve this mess to leave the government maybe to another Republican president who will thank it again after taking credit for everything. So as I usually say, talk blue, discuss blue, vote blue, listen blue. And until the next video, thank you for your attention to this matter.